So let me take you on a spring tour of my garden. This is it. It's covered in snow. I believe I have jinxed spring because in my last video it was so nice and warm outside that I planted out my broad beans and I was so excited to get the rest of my seedlings out. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon. So I have a ton of seedlings that are cooped up inside my house. A lot of them are about 3 to 4 weeks old and are starting to show signs of distress, like yellowing leaves and look a little wilty. So this video is going to be about why some of the leaves are yellowing and how I'm planning on helping my seedlings survive until the snow melts, which I hope will be by next week. Otherwise, I'm in big trouble. Hey everyone, my name is Adriana from tinygardenhabit.com. I garden in Zone 6B, Transylvania, Romania, and my mission is to help you make the most out of your small garden. And today is going to be all about yellowing leaves and why this happens when growing seedlings. So if this is the first time you're starting seeds and your seedlings are now probably about 3 to 4 weeks old, then you are starting to notice some yellowing in the bottom leaves, and that's perfectly normal. Don't freak out. Those are the baby leaves, also called the seed leaves, also called the cotyledons, and they are the first leaves that emerge. They are not true leaves, and they even look very different from the true leaves. And their role is to help with the plant's nutrition and photosynthesis in the first stages. And once the other leaves emerge, those are no longer needed. So if your plant otherwise looks healthy, but only the bottom 2 leaves are starting to yellow and even dry and fall off, then it's perfectly normal, and that's happening in my indoor setup right now, and I'm going to show you some plants that have that going on. The most obvious case of yellowing leaves are my sunflowers because they have these giant leaves. The plant is otherwise healthy and strong, but these are just the cotyledons, no longer needed, and they will dry off. I noticed yellowing leaves on my aubergines, which then I transplanted to bigger pots, and here you can see they already wilted away and fell off. The same thing with spinach. Some leaves are already curling and falling off, but the plants otherwise look really healthy. The same with chilies, but not the same thing with peppers. So it's not really, what I'm trying to show you here is that not all plants will react in the same way. For example, we have sweet here that has yellow and drying leaves. But the kohlrabi, on the other hand, is, well, the leaves are actually purple, so they won't turn yellow, but it's looking fine. Well, maybe one over here. And the last thing that I wanted to show you in terms of yellowing leaves are my radishes. They did this after transplanting them. Last year they went yellow for a little bit, but what I find very funny with this variety, they're about a month old and I can't really transplant them out right now, but they started swelling. You guys, it's not time yet. Oh my god. I don't want my radishes to grow indoors, so they're starting to swell and I don't really know what to do about that. Look at that. Okay, so now that we've determined that this yellowing is normal, the question is, do we have to do anything about it? Well, one thing we could do is snip the yellow leaves off with a pair of fine scissors, because if they're big leaves, then they're actually still sapping some energy out of the plant, energy that could otherwise be used in better ways by the plant. Or you could just do nothing and they will fall off on their own, as we've seen with the plants that I've showed you. But in my opinion, as long as the seedlings aren't showing any signs of distress, I think we should just let them do their own thing. Okay, so far so good, but what happens if your plants have true leaves, first true leaves, second true leaves that are, or the entire plant starting to go yellow? That is not a good sign. That is something that you should be concerned about. Now, thankfully, I don't have any plants going yellow at the moment, except maybe for this this batch of bunching onions that I started growing about a month ago. I've multi-sown them because they are picked as green onions, so they're about 8 or 9 in one cell, and they're starting to look a little wilty. I mean, it's really high time that I move them outside, but that's kind of how your plants would start looking like. So when these big leaves start getting yellow, then it's usually a sign, a clear sign actually, that you may be overwatering them. And I'm going to explain exactly why. Overwatering seedlings is the most frequent mistake new gardeners make. And what overwatering does is basically suffocate the roots of the plants, which need air in order to thrive. And if you overwater your plants in cold and damp conditions, then you can encourage fungal disease, damping off disease, and then there's really no saving for your plants. Now, why do I think that leaves turn yellow from overwatering and not anything else? I mean, it's definitely possible to have a different problem, but this is usually the most common mistake. When you're underwatering your plants, it looks really different. I mean, every single seedling has a way of telling you what's wrong with them if you carefully look at them and investigate. So when they are thirsty, they look soft and fall over, and as soon as you water them, they spring right back up. So the problem was not enough water. When they are overwatered, you can actually check this by weighing your tray. So you hold it up and see how much it weighs when it's watered and how much it weighs when it's almost dry and needs watering. Because if you simply just check the tray inside for water and don't find any, that's not a reason for watering your plants, because the potting soil is actually absorbent enough to act as a sponge, and it can provide water for your seedlings for days to come. I only water my seedlings about once every 2 or 3 days now. You may ask, what if grow lights are to blame for yellowing leaves? And that's a totally legitimate question, but plants tell us if the lights are not strong enough, they will get leggy. And if the lights are too strong and if it's too hot inside, then the plants will get scorched. And I have the perfect example to show you here. These are beetroot seedlings that, along with some sweets, but don't mind those, that I tried to germinate when the room was really hot because we were germinating some peppers, and the lights were too strong and they didn't like it. And they don't look green at all, they look purple, the leaves look waxy, and they just look dry and burnt overall. And they probably didn't like the soil mix as much either. By contrast, I have another batch of beetroot seedlings started a couple of weeks later after that. I didn't repeat the same mistakes. I put them in a cool part of the room. I didn't give them as much light, and I started them in 100% compost. And even though they're a little bit leggy, they look so much better than the other ones, so much healthier. So light was the issue here, but it didn't necessarily turn the leaves yellow. And lastly, let's talk about fertilizing, because some of your seedlings, if they're getting older, they might be turning yellow because they haven't been fed enough and because the soil that you started them in doesn't have any nutrients. Now that hasn't happened to me yet, and it's not something that should happen to you either if your seedlings are younger than 4 weeks. So if you have tomatoes that are getting older, or aubergines or peppers, plants that you're generally going to keep indoors for 2 to 3 months, then you either want to start feeding them, or you want to move them in bigger pots that have plenty of nutrient-rich compost in it. But you should know that over-fertilizing your plants is just as bad, if not worse, than under-fertilizing them, because they don't need as many nutrients when they're young. It's really more likely that your plants will start getting yellow if you feed them too much than if you don't feed them at all. Well, that was it for today. I hope you found this information useful. I'm going to get back to cleaning my grow room and sowing and thinning and doing what gardeners do this time of the year. I will keep you updated with how everything is growing, and until next time, take care, my friends.